Okay, so I will start the presentation. Okay, so my name is Chaya Mazouz, and I'm the VP of Regulatory Affairs at Orgenesis. And today I will present to you the European requirements and strategies for cell and gene therapy products. So the drug regulation in Europe, we work with the EMA, the European Medicine Agency. So in Europe, there's an established, of course, legal framework, and that governs all the regulations that are related to any medicinal product for human use, and of course for advanced therapies for ATMPs. The framework ensures that the quality, safety, and efficacy of any medicine that will be placed in the EU market meets the requirements that were established in the directive of 2001/83/EC. And this directive is only the main directive. And in this directive, we will have references to other directives that give you more specific aspects for clinical trial, manufacturing, orphan medicinal products, and other issues. So just to give you a nice quote, so the EU legal framework for human medicine sets standards to ensure a high level of public health protection and quality, safety, and efficacy of the authorized medicines in the EU. So this is going to be our main concern, and this is our main goal, is to focus on quality, safety, and efficacy. So ATMPs, as I'm sure we could agree on, ATMPs, at least in Europe, are divided into three types. We have the gene therapy that use any gene therapy. It could be like CAR-T using that we do a transfection. It could be CRISPR, anything that is related to the use of gene products that utilize any modification of the gene. We have somatic cell therapy medicines. This is any product that contains cells or tissues that are manipulated to change their biological characteristics. And we have tissue engineered medicine. So the legal framework for an ATMP is again designed to ensure the free movement of these medicines with the EU and to access the EU market. We have a specific regulation, and it's presented here. And the regulations also establish what we are familiar with. It's called the CAT, the Committee for Advanced Therapies. And this is a multidisciplinary committee whose primary responsibility is to assess, again, the quality, safety, and efficacy of the ATMPs. And in parallel, they also follow the scientific development of the field. They were introduced in 2009, and at least from my point of view, the CAT made a big difference in working with Europe. Till 2009, they were very strict. You had to have a checklist, and you had to comply with the checklist. But since 2009, when the CAT came into enforcement, we see that they're open and they're really willing to discuss new scientific developments, and they want to hear the industry as well as they want to present their position. So the first thing that the CAT did, and it took a long time, is the prime. A prime is a very important component when you want to manufacture or you want to develop products for the EU. The EMA introduced the priority medicines scheme in 2016 for a particular purpose. Prime uses tools already existing in the EU regulatory framework, like scientific advice, conditional approval, but they allow us to define and optimize the development pathway of priority medicines. Now, you need to qualify for a prime, and what do they mean when they say priority medicines? It's not exactly as the same in the EU and the FDA. So here you have to comply to have a high unmet medical need and or demonstrating a therapeutic innovation. In order to qualify to the prime, you need in 98% present also initial clinical data. It's not enough to be supported by preclinical data. Very limited products could get a prime designation based on only preclinical data. Once you get once you're qualified for the prime, it's like working with a consultancy group. You have the EU supports all the conditioning and everything that you do. I think you don't see my screen now, I notice. Okay, so I'm not going to start from beginning, but now I notice that I didn't share my screen. So do you see my screen now? Okay. Okay, so the prime is a very important tool that we really need to use it as much as possible, because when you get qualified for the prime, that means that you have two project managers that will support the development. You could consult with them. You could have informal meetings. You have like a pathway directly to the EU. So as I said, the prime uses already tools that are in place. So we have the regulatory framework of the EU, and we have the scientific advice. And the scientific advice is a formal meeting that you start a dialogue with the EMA, and then you get feedback. Now, I want to be something that I think needs to be very clear about any interaction with the European agency. When you interact with the European agency, they always interact when they look at the marketing authorization, the MAA, that's the marketing authorization application. They do not want to discuss with you your specific clinical trial, discuss with you your preclinical trial. They want to give you feedback when they look at what you want to ask them about a preclinical, CMC, or whatever, but they want to look at it as part of reaching the endpoint. And the endpoint is the marketing authorization. So any time that we have any dialogue with the EMA, it has to be based on the endpoint when we have already a product. So we could go to a scientific advice, and the path through that, we also could use a conditional approval and accelerated assessments. These are also regulatory procedures that could be used as part of any strategy that you want to build. And for a conditional approval, that means that you could get an approval based on limited amount of data. And we could see it here in a flow. So for let's say that we have already an ATMP and it was already classified as an ATMP, and we want to go to the agency, we want to have a discussion. Now, when I discuss about Europe, I'm discussing about the EMA, about the CAT, but don't forget that any of these procedures could be done, scientific advice could also be done on a competent authority level, that you could go to a specific country and ask them the same questions that you want to ask the CAT. So let's say that we already have a classification and we know that we are designated to be an ATMP. So then we have to answer three major questions. Is this ATMP custom made and a non-routine basis? That means that there's no clinical trial being tested, and this is going to be a per patient use, and it's going to be done not on a routine basis. If the answer for this is yes, maybe go for a hospital exemption. Now, I want to say something about hospital exemption. Hospital exemption was broadly used, and now the EMA is trying to restrict the use of hospital exemption. So you have to be very careful when you select to go for a hospital exemption. When you go for a hospital exemption, that means that your product cannot be on clinical trials in Europe for the same indication. The second question would be, could this product be used in children? So the question could be either yes or no, but then you need, if there is a yes or a no, you have to have what is called a pediatric investigation plan in place. And the last but not least will be, will clinical trials provide comprehensive data? Okay, so let's say that the answer is yes. You want to go for a strict phase 1 to whatever we have. So then it's a standard manufacturing authorization. Not manufacturing, it's a standard approval, a commercial approval, and you go for a standard approval. If you want to go to a conditional, that means that you have the data, but you only have limited data because maybe it's an orphan designation, maybe it's very complicated to enroll patients. If you have a good scientific explanation why you want to go for a conditional and only then get your final approval, that is also, you could go for a conditional marketing authorization. And if you know that you will never have enough data to support your claim, let's say it's a very ultra rare product, and you know that the let's say that the effect is small, and that you need a humongous amount of patients, then you could go for what is called exceptional circumstances marketing authorization and ask for an approval. Then after we answered these questions, then we would ask, could we go for a prime designation for this product, yes or no? And if we could, then we need to go to there's an eligibility process, and then we should go to the eligibility. Okay, so now we understand the broad view, and let's start what we could do from when we have a product in research and development till we could reach post-authorization. So when we have the EU will want to support you as early as possible in your development process, and they want to support advanced therapy developers. And for that, we have scientific guidelines, and we need to use the ability to meet the authorities. Once you have already a marketing authorization in place, then of course we know we want to go towards a marketing authorization. The first thing will be to do the advanced therapy classification. And then of course we need to do clinical and everything in support of this marketing authorization. When we have a marketing authorization in place, then what we need to practice is post-authorization, and we need to do pharmacovigilance for advanced therapies, and of course have a mitigation plan in place. So how will we start? So we want to start we have this great idea, and we want to start research and development. So you need to be aware as the first step, you need to understand what are the registrations and what are the different stages that are needed for GMP, for GCP, and for GMP. And then we need to know that the EMA offers us a support. We have the scientific advice and protocol assistance. We could go to an orphan designation. We could go for, if we are an SME. An SME is a classification that is based on the amount of, mainly on the revenue and the amount of employees that you have in the company. If you could classify as an SME, it has a very big, huge benefit in a few aspects. One, there's a specific office that will take care of you. By the way, also the same for the FDA. And you also get a reduction in cost for all kinds of scientific advice and all kinds of meetings that you will want to do with the agency, with the regulatory authority in the EU. Of course, you need to go for a classification. And another very important is the certification of quality and non-clinical data for SMEs. If you are classified in an SME and you work with the Office of SME as early as you want, when you feel that you have data, that your quality, your CMC, and your non-clinical data is robust, and you know that it could support already a marketing authorization, even if you're not even ready for the marketing authorization, you could go to have a certification of your data. So let's start communication with EMA as early as possible. Because EMA could provide developers on the most appropriate way to generate the robustness of your data and what evidence will be required in order to support your marketing authorization. It's in a timely manner, by the way, it doesn't take too long, and it's a very high quality of data, and it's binding. On any stage of your medicine development, you could approach and ask guidance from EMA, what will be the best way to move forward. When you discuss with EMA and you want to go for a scientific advice, You could not ask an open question. You need to ask the question as, does the presented data for preclinical as it is now, does it support a phase 1 in light of a marketing authorization? And then you need to give the rationale why you think that the data that you're presenting is good enough and it supports the question. You could not ask an open question. And then we have a protocol assistant. This is something that is very unique for a orphan designation, for, of course, rare disease. And in a protocol assistant, which is different than a regular scientific advice, you do get the ability to ask a little bit more detailed questions, but these questions also, you need to come with the rationale. So you need to show that you have a significant benefit with the product that you want to test. And if there is already an orphan designated product in the market, and you want to know you want to understand non-superiority or superiority requirements that will be required in clinical trials, then the right thing is to go for a protocol assistant meeting with the EMA. So as I discussed before, the certification for the SME is crucial. It's a very this procedure is not practiced enough, and it should be. So the CAT gives us the ability to go for a certification procedure with for an ATMP. That means any way on the way, when you feel that you have a robust data, go and discuss it. It's written in a legislation, it's very clear, and the turnover is about 90 days. The bright side of it, that first of all, if the data is not supportive or not good enough, they will tell you, and they will tell you maybe how to strengthen your data. But if they agree, that means that you at least know that there's a few boxes that they are closed and they will not be opened again when you want to go for a marketing authorization application. These are very timely consuming activities. So if you could get as early as possible a assurance that you're on it's not the right path, it means that you're in the right place exactly, that will save time as you go later with your product. But you need everything we discussed now. Till now, anybody could apply, but for certification procedure, it is unique only for SMEs, and as I mentioned, it's based on the revenue and number of people in the company. So this is something that I always like to really emphasize when I discuss regulatory work, and regulatory is my passion. But we need to know that science remains the fundamental implement behind any successful new drug application. However, effective communication between companies and regulatory authority at each stage of the development process is an essential element to move forward. From my experience, when I work with companies that at the end gain approval, usually that means that they start early as possible interaction with the authorities, and that they're also completely transparent. And the minute they know that you're transparent and you build a relationship based on your transparency and good scientific work, you will see that it's the hurdles are less. And this is just to give you an example for the development process. On the top, you could see a development process that is old school. We go for a phase 1, we go for a phase 2, and we go for a phase 3. But now we try to go to the new school. And here we will find that you could, a lot of times in your preclinical development plan, we don't go anymore phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You could jump from phase 1 to a phase 3. Everything needs to have a rationale. Everything needs to have good scientific ground. The minute that you could convince the authorities, convince yourself first. And then once you convince the authorities, they don't forget, we are all on the same boat. All of us want to bring safe and effective products to the patients. So it's very important that when you go to meet regulators, that you're ready. So I gather that by the first contact, you already have significant amount of data, and that you also invested a significant amount of time and funds. So don't forget, it's a one-time shot for each meeting. So you could go for other meetings, but when you go for a meeting, come prepared. Don't forget, the authorities want you to succeed. They are trying to be helpful. However, they are the gatekeepers. They are the patient's advocates. And that's why they have the mandate to protect and promote public health. And they will ask you very difficult questions. There are specific standards that must be met to address regulatory concerns, but they are willing to discuss how successfully could you address these concerns and how do you need to address standards. We're not in the previous century that it was one way or the highway. There is really a way. The standards are written in a way that the interpretation could be applied based on risk assessment, based on tools, scientific tools, and don't forget, the regulators, they want you to succeed. They want to bring new therapies into the field. A pharmaceutical product cannot be launched unless significant proofs showing product safety and efficacy are presented and have been found by the regulatory agency to be satisfactory. And I know there's times that we feel that the regulatory agencies we don't understand the rationale. But unfortunately, as I said, they are the gatekeepers. So they need to think that our data is satisfactory. And if we are sure that we are right, so don't be afraid. You could argue with the agencies. You could argue with the competent authorities. You could argue with the EMA, with the FDA. They are willing to have these discussions, but at the end, they have the last word. So now I want to tell you a little bit about Orgenesis and why was Orgenesis constructed and where do we see, how could we help in the discussion we just had till now. So let's focus a minute on an autologous either gene or cell therapy product, and we call it vein to vein because it leaves the patient and reaches back the patient. And as you can see, it's a very long journey. We start with the patient, we either go through apheresis, whole blood, tissue collection, whatever, and then we do some preparation at wherever we decided to, and then we need to transfer it to a manufacturing facility, we need to thaw it, we need to accept it, and then again, we need to start the manufacturing process, and this is a long journey. This long journey has a very big impact on the ability to introduce cell and gene therapies. So we know that these products are complex, and we know that we have real-time issues we have real-time supply issues. On the other hand, we have constant evaluation and learning by both the drug developers and the regulators. The scientific discovery and the desire to we want to be very fast. And a lot of times we have a great product that we know even how to manufacture it. But if we don't know how to test it, and it's going to work terrific in the clinical, but if we don't know what will be the in vitro testing in order to differentiate a good and a bad batch, we cannot move forward. So a lot of times we are very quick with the discovery of the product, but we need not to forget that there's a lot of supportive data that we need to know. The scaling of the manufacturing and the clinical trials that we need to put in effort are extremely high. And we also want to balance between the speed and the ability to develop. So if we take together what we discussed about the journey and about the manufacturing and the challenges, we reach considerations that we must take into account. So one, there's a lot of variability in starting material. Is each patient that we get a start, let's discuss CAR T. We want to start with an apheresis or from whole blood. We want to manufacture NK cells. When we take an apheresis, what is the variability in the starting material? What is the variability among the patients? What control do we have over high variability raw materials? Well, part of the products use PBMCs, feeder cells, but these are from healthy donors. We use human serum albumin, or we use plasma. So how do we control high variability of raw materials that we feel that are mandatory for our product? What do we do with the manual manufacturing process? If we have an autologous product and we want to repeat it again and again and again, it's not like manufacturing, let's say, an allogeneic product. If we want to manufacture an autologous product, time after time, what is the comparability that will be required between manufacturing one product to another? And that brings me to the last but not to least, to the qualification and the validation that is needed to be introduced when we want to manufacture a product. What qualification will be needed for an autologous or an allogeneic, but I'm focusing on an autologous. What are the qualifications? What do I do when I want to qualify a product? Do I use healthy donors? Is it the same as doing the standard 3 qualification batches? Can I use cells taken from a healthy donor, or do I need to find a patient? So all these challenges and considerations are taken into account, and that's what brought Orgenesis to set a new suggestion. So Orgenesis is a global biotech company, and it's committed to transforming the processing and testing of cell and gene therapies by accelerating the clinical development and commercialization through what we call a point-of-care platform. So what is the point-of-care platform? So today we mostly know that there are centralized manufacturing. Most of the procedures are non-automated. That's why we have a lot of risks. And also, of course, the complicated logistics. So if we want to reduce the cost, and we want to reduce the costs, we want to have better scalability, and we want to reduce the logistics, we need to find a new solution. So this is just to remind you what we just discussed till now, that we have the issue of the cells, the starting material, the logistics of the transportation, and the manufacturing. So what will be the next step? What did Orgenesis want to propose? So we know that cell and gene therapies could be based on risk. That means that both manufacturing and development. And when we read the guidelines, we see that there's a guideline that says GMP guidelines permit to manufacture close to the patient or close to an area. That means they allow decentralized manufacturing. Decentralized manufacturing, or in our terminology, point of care, platform allows us to manufacture the same product in 20, 50 different manufacturing setups. That means we have the ability to take a product, either from academia, even from early development, and to develop it in a way that it will adhere to the requirements that they could be manufactured in 10 different sites and will be considered the same product. So the GMP guidelines for ATMPs contain a welcoming for flexibility. And when we want to welcome the flexibility, we want to use decentralized manufacturing. So the regulatory challenge here extends not only about the comparability, but what will be the regulatory interface that we want to propose. So Orgenesis is currently working together with competent authorities in Europe in order to implement our suggestion for point of care platform. How would we promote autologous manufacturing at humongous amount of point of care that are all around Europe, or for this, or they could be in anywhere. They could be in Korea, they could be in India, they could be in the US, they could be in Europe. So what is decentralized manufacturing? So we think, at least in Orgenesis, that we have the potential to facilitate uptake and cell and gene therapies. We will need, of course, a new regulatory framework, but it will be based on everything that we know till now. We don't want to invent the wheel. We want to use the wheels that are going good for us. And the framework is based on linked to current regulatory control systems, and including inspection and clinical trials. What Orgenesis supports as a CDMO is the development and the manufacturing as autologous products that are specifically have the ability to be manufactured at different point of cares, at different manufacturing facilities around the world. So patient safety depends, of course, on the production of a safe, and we need to show that's the main concern of the authorities, and that's what we're working with them together. We want to show them that the product that we manufactured, let's say in Korea, in Seoul, if we have a point of care there, is comparable to a product that will be manufactured in Manhattan in the US, in Madrid, Italy, Germany, that they could all be under the same manufacturing authorization. We know that there's an inherent biological variability, but that's what we aim to. We are aiming to harness the variability of cells to our ability to manufacture the same product around the globe. And then it doesn't matter if we have 10, 20, or 50 different production locations. So this is our AMPULE. AMPULE stands for Orgenesis, and it stands for Orgenesis Mobile Processing Unit and Labs. So when I say mobile, it doesn't mean that it can be transferred on a day-to-day basis, because then, of course, we need to repeat qualifications and validation. It could be mobilized fairly easy. It's a container, and this container, this is how it looks. And it's like a miniature, it's like a clean room. It is a clean room. It supports the clean room environment. And we could mobilize it fairly easily by ship or by a truck from one place to another. But once it reaches a place, we do not address it as mobile. It stands on Earth. And so what will this do? What with our point of care platform? So first of all, it will allow us what we do in Orgenesis, as I said, and this will promote the point of care. The process development is a unique process development that focuses on to have closed systems, because if we want to have reliable and suitable manufacturing, we need to have them closed. As much as possible, we want to have them automated. We don't start everything at day one. It's stepwise. We will start first closing as much as we can any manufacturing process, and then we could go for early phase clinical trials. And in parallel to phase one or early phases studies, we could start unique automation for any product. We're accessible. The regional point of care centers, they enable us to deploy our point of cares, our AMPULEs, wherever we want around the globe. And of course, they allow to minimize manual processing step and isolate the processing units to enable parallel processing and low costs. So just to give you, I'm almost there at the end. So just to give you short pictures. So we have US, Korea, we have Israel, and we have Belgium. We have point of cares, we have all kinds of development units. So what next? So the most important thing, we need to work together. The industry, the regulatories, and for that, that's a lot of things that I in Orgenesis do. I try to leverage the industry together with the regulators. So the first thing that we really need is to work together, all of us. And I know that we need to compete with each other with different products, but we also are an industry, a very unique industry that need to work together. So the first thing, we need to qualify small scale models because we know that they're lacking, and we want to reduce the production costs. We want to have manufacturing methods that are developed, oriented to a point of cares, and that will allow us decentralized manufacturing. And we want to address, of course, the uncertainties that we have for the long term. CAR-T, we need to follow the patients for 15 years. Is that enough? What will happen for patients that already received the course of CAR-T? Could we give them other treatments? All these things will be needed to be addressed as we move forward. And again, together, we could make this happen, but we really need to work together. The supply chain, the medical centers, academia, CMOs, the method developments, regulators, university, we all need to work together, because only if we work together, we will be able to transform the future. So thank you, and I really believe that together we will make cell and gene therapy accessible for all. So thank you very much, and I would be happy to answer any question, and feel free if you want to shoot me emails, I will be happy to respond.